without further ado, the introduction for our speaker today will be given by our very own faculty member and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Juan Rofes. So Juan, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Arturo, Jay. Welcome everybody to this BINALOT talk. So I will, first of all, I will introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Eduardo Corona. He's an archaeologist and quaternary paleontologist at the National Institute of Anthropology and History, or INA in Spanish, and a national researcher by National Council of Science and Technology, CONACYT. He's a member of the scientific committee of the journal Archaeología Mexicana and Human-Animal Relationship Seminar since 1997 up to now. Their main interest is the comparative study of animal domestication in Mesoamerica and other geographical regions. His publications are available on ResearchGate and in academia. And besides these notes, I would like to add that I know Eduardo, or Lalo, as the friends call him, from more than 20 years. We met each other in Madrid, in Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, so many years ago, and we have kept this very long-standing friendship up to now. And around more than a year ago, he contacted me to interested in the presence of the turkey, the wild turkey here in the Philippines. So I said that to begin with, I have very few idea on that, but I will do research. Eventually, we understood that all the zoo archaeology of the galleon trade during the Spanish Empire is really poorly known in both our countries that have so many things in common, Mexico and the Philippines. And we decided to start a project that we informally called the Zooarchaeology of the Galleon Trade Project, whose first supervisee, it's our colleague and student of master student, graduate student of ASP Cape Cornell. Eventually, Eduardo will be appointing someone in Mexico, so we can understand and we can study in detail the influence or all the species, the animal species that came to the Philippines from the New World, and vice versa, right? So well, we will be trying to continue, keep and update and improve our project in the following months and years, hopefully. And yeah, without further delay, I would like to introduce you with Eduardo, who will talk today about some historical notes about the introduction of the wild turkey in the Pacific. Lalo, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much for your kind words, Juan. First of all, I want to thank to all the people for the BINALOT talk, to Arturo, Ana, and Juan for the kind invitation for this small talk. Before to start this talk, I would like to say that the wild turkey currently is one of the most important birds in the world, belong with the hen and the ducks. And it's important by the meal. Now the people think that the meal of the wild turkey is healthy. And besides this, we have a long story of a long relationship with human populations, and we try to explain some of these in this place. The wild turkey is an endemic bird of the Americas with a long evolutionary history in this area. But now, in brief, we know that their common name has many origins. The common name is guajolote in Spanish, in Mexico, but the origin is from the indigenous name 𝘨𝘍𝘍𝘬𝘍𝑢𝑗. And also another names of the turkey suggest the place where it's coming, is the origin place of the bird. In that way, the dindon is from the India in France. Peru is the name of the country of South America. And Turkey is because the people believe that this bird comes from that country. But anyway, the use of the wild turkeys in Mesoamerica cultures is diverse. We have the use as food for ritual purposes, or as a meal, or quotidian meal, only for high status people, not for the common people. It's curious, and it's a very important this point. Also, as raw material, the bones are used as a tool. Needles, for example, needles for use with hair or anything else. And the feathers are used for blankets or in shields, for war shields covered of feathers. Also, the bowels were used for as a therapeutic resource, and it's important this point also. For the social imaginary, the body of white turkeys is a part of different kind of offerings, and we have many representations in sculptures and paintings in all the cultures in Mesoamerica. However, the distribution of the bird covers practically all Mesoamerican cultures. From the we see in the map in this part of in this map we see the distribution of wild turkey in different Mesoamerican cultures, and we see covers from the Lithic period to the Preclassic times. Already when the first agricultural settlements, already 1,800 years before the present, to post-classic and colonial epochs in 16th century. However, this wide distribution is influenced mainly for human transportations of specimens from the Preclassic times to onward. And this situation made obscure the natural distribution of this species. To clarify this situation, and a colleague, Cruz Silva, and I made an ecological model, and we see different results. Here in the left map in this part, we see that one of the species, the ocellated turkey, is restricted to the area of the Yucatan Peninsula, and we don't see a distribution of wild turkey, another species, in central Mexico, but we have in the central part of north of Mexico and in many areas of North America. But in another map from a Mexican institution, CONABIO, for studies the biodiversity in Mexico, they made a map and says that the distribution is a wide distribution of the wild turkey in practically in all Mexico, and also the ocellated turkey is only restricted to all the Yucatan Peninsula. However, when we made our ecological model, we found that the ocellated turkey is restricted to the Yucatan Peninsula, but only for the humidity areas. This is the part covered here in yellow. And we have the distribution of the wild turkey in these areas, mainly in these parts of white and black. but it's not distributed in central Mexico. And it's interesting because we found that there are two variables that have influence to this distribution. One is the humidity, and another is the temperature. And we found that the ocellated turkey is restricted to some kind of humidity and temperature is very restricted, and for that reason is only in the Yucatan Peninsula. But the wild turkey is a species with a great tolerance to the temperature and humidity. Maybe these conditions made it possible that the wild turkey is distributed, but and made an easiest transportation for the human populations. And this data also suggests the different management strategies for wild turkey. We see in the graphic the kind of the domestication where the humans need control three variables: the reproduction to produce specific lineages or breeds by artificial selection, while the handling or backyard production only needs control of food and territory, while the garden hunting and another kind of management is only needs control the territory and maybe the food, because it's in the areas where it's produces are cultivated products as maize, beans, or similars. And in the hunting, it's practically wild animals and do not exceed some kind of control. The wild turkey are mainly now in the three first stages of management. In another way, the wild turkey we see we have derived for the before data. We have two kind of breeding systems. One is the backyard system, with the animals are free grazing, are free or in semi-confinement, and it was used only for auto-consumption or maybe for local market or sell in local markets. While then another one is the industrial system, where animals are in confinement, have a short life cycle, and was used mainly for commercial purposes, for the meal and the eggs. There are two important data. One is now the 80% of the world production is located now in these countries: USA, Brazil, Germany, France, and Italy. And currently, as we see in the next slide, in the 20th century, the wild turkey was introduced in Egypt, Bangladesh, India, and the production now is growing in these places. The wild turkey, as we see, is a species with a wide geographic expansion, and this is a product of many pulses in different times, in different stages. One of first, the origin in Mesoamerica, the most ancient uses in Mesoamerica, and with the Spanish conquest, the first specimens traveled from Mexico to Spain and to Europe in 16th century. It is documented in historical chronicles, and later in the 16th century was expanded to all Europe, mainly in the royal houses. But also in the 16th century and early 17th century, the wild turkey was expanded to Central America and South America, mainly Colombia and Venezuela, Peru, etc. And also in the 16th century, starts the travel, as we see in a few minutes, to the Pacific area. And later, it's interesting because in all this time, the wild turkey is only in semi-confinement. It's only have a management. But in Europe, it's fully domesticated, the bird. And for that reason, now Spain, France, England are one of the main producers of turkey meal. And in the 18th century, the fully domesticated specimens travel with the people, travel back again to America, to the English colonies by the peasants that travel to inhabit the colonial, the English colonies. And this is interesting because we have now this part of fully domesticated specimens with particular lineage now produced in Europe, and we have a kind of not fully domesticated in the case of America. We don't have a practice of fully domesticated specimens of wild turkey. Now, well, how starts the Pacific route to the area of Asia? And we found that the Spaniards, all the Europeans are looking for travel to Asia for the species. We have the English, the Portuguese, and the Spaniards. I made reference particularly for the Spaniards because it's important for the relationships from Mexico and Filipinas. But the Spaniards looking for the species, looking for made the first circumnavigation travel, spanning from the 1519 to 1522, and it was lead for Fernando de Magallanes, and Juan Sebastián Elcano was the people that concluded this voyage. They discovered the Philippines in 1521, and then moved to the Moluccas, Indonesia, New Guinea, and looking for the places, and also sailed to India and Africa. We see this route in pink. This is the route of this first navigation. But also we see a key here is Acapulco. That's the port that Hernán Cortés founded and started to travel to the South Sea. And they travel also for North America, and also made the route to South America, to Peru and Bolivia, etc., Colombia. And these expeditions particularly from New Spain, we have here a picture from Acapulco, the main port, to travel to the Pacific. And in this part in 1540, there are regular routes from the Pacific ports to also from Huatulco and Tehuantepec, southern states from Mexico, and they travel to Peru, Ecuador, and Panama. And they trade many merchandise like silver, mercury, cocoa, and surely we don't have we have some historical information about the travel of as we say here, llamas, vicuñas, turkey, potatoes, pineapples, and corn. But we don't have clear how is the commerce from and the amounts of the trades in these years, in those years. And it's important to know how it's made the commerce in that moment between New Spain and another places of the Spanish crown. But it's important to say that in 1564 starts the expedition of Miguel López de Legazpi and Andrés de Urdaneta. Maybe you know better that names, and they departed from Mexico and heads to Manila. Legazpi established in Manila the first Spanish settlement and fight for the territory with the local people and with Portuguese and with the English and with too many people. And Urdaneta discovered the return by sea from Manila to Acapulco, to Mexico, to New Spain. And this travel starts the Pacific trade route, and now there's like Manila Galleon. Another names are Chinas Now and the Acapulco Galleon. And what the years, the spanning years of these travels are from 1565 to 1850. And we found here in particular for Filipinas, for Philippines, we have the Hispanic Chronicle of Antonio de Morga in 1609. And he has many notes about the introduction of some animals in the area. He indicates that the cows, the donkeys, the mules were introduced and reproduced very well in Philippines, and while the goat, the sheep, and rams, they are dead affected by humidity and the pasture. The pasture are bad, they say. He said. Also, he describes many kinds of chickens breeding in the Pacific Islands, and some of them are from Chinese or European origin. In the poetry, he put in clear that also duck, geese, and pigeons and turkeys are breeding in the settlements of the area. They say he says that the name of that the local people gives to the wild turkey is pavo. It's derivated from the pavo in Spanish, and started the breeds as free-range birds in the Philippines. And currently, as I see in some veterinary documents, says that many people still in homesteads and neighborhoods still raising wild turkeys currently in Philippines. And we see that also in this document says that in the 20th century, there are some particular lineage. They say about the broad-breasted bronze turkey. And describes that as a larger and heavier than the Spanish introduced turkey. But I don't know. I talked with Juan about this, and they say it's not clear that information, but maybe we can found some better information later. And I know it's interesting because also the Spaniard route is not the only one, and maybe another possible route for the exchange of wild turkey is by Portugal and Philippines. The Portuguese route was one of the historical data shows that the turkey arrived in Portugal in the 16th century, maybe from South America. Some says that from Brazil, another says from the exchange from Colombia or another port in the Atlantic area. However, we found clearly in some remains, some archaeological remains in Coimbra, in a convent from the 16th century. We found that Simon Davis and Marta Moreno founded some turkey bones, and they studied and published this material. And also, I found it in some Portuguese cookbooks and recipe books from the 16th and 17th century, where it shows that the turkeys were used as meals. And later, in another historical source, in the 18th century, we found that the Fray Jerónimo de Pelayo writes a cookbook also, and they say that the turkey was used as a meal in this convent. And this part is very interesting because we don't have really great information on archaeological remains in the Philippines, but we hope that looking for some reviewing some another excavations or that made it previously in Philippines, we found some materials, and or maybe in another historical sources, we found some clues about the uses of wild turkey in Philippines. But the interest, as Juan says in the introduction, is not only the wild turkey. We try to recompile information about all the species that were traded by the Spaniards, or maybe include the Portuguese people in these travel routes, and see how and the times of the exchange of these organisms in flora and fauna in those times. We hope this is the main information about this, and hope you are interested. And if you have some information, we are grateful to and to share your data with us for try to have some advances in this research. But for me, the historical, these are the historical notes that I would like to share with you, and I hope you have some questions or comments to this brief talk. And this is my email, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Professor Eduardo, for sharing your research. Yeah, it seems like a very interesting topic of those, trans-Pacific trade routes, especially during the Spanish galleon trade. I know that some of my friends here and Juan as well work in that context. So I'd be really interested to sort of see, what their comments are. And as you can sort of see, Juan already has his hand raised. So right now, we are just going to move to the question period. So for those who have questions, feel free to use the raise hand function under the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, you could type your question in the chat so that we could read it aloud for you if you're a little shy to actually voice your question. And alternatively, if you want to send me a private message, you could do that as well, and I could ask the question anonymously. Yeah, so for right now, I think Dr. Rofes has a question. So if he can go ahead and unmute himself and start his video. Juan?
Yes. Here I'm active. Let me activate the video. Okay. Hey, so first of all, thank you very much, Lalo, for your very enlightening talk. I already took a lot of notes for our research here. I will be asking you in particular archival or chronicles or written sources for your data. So I find particularly fascinating that map showing the first expansion of the Turkey worldwide. That it was a simple map just showing that the different waves. So if I'm not wrong, there was the Spanish took the Turkey to Spain. I don't know if in the 16th century around there. So and then at some point during the galleon trade, the Turkey was brought to these regions, to Southeast Asia via Manila, right? So there's a first wave of turkeys arriving to the Philippines and being raised and used here. But then there is this turkeys that stayed in Europe for a while, returned to America via the immigration, especially from British countries and other countries to America in the 19th century.
Yes.
And after the colonial period of Spain, when it finished in around the beginning, the dawn of the 20th century, the Americans have a very long protectorate here, right, for 40 years. So I'm sure they brought turkey, but not the original turkey, right? They probably brought the turkey that came back to Americas from Europe. And this American and re-American turkey mixed with, probably mingled and eventually mixed with the turkey here. So what I envision here is a very amazing potential for archaeogenetics. So I'm sorry, our colleague Mike Herrera is not around, but I think he will be very interested in testing all turkey bones to try to disentangle exactly in what measure, right, the turkeys that we have are product of mix between these different lineages or waves of immigration. Right, so I found that really fascinating. So that's more of a comment, not a question. And then you were talking about the testimonies of several chroniclers, historians, ethnohistorians, and the Morga. We need to review that with it's a note to review with Kate Purnell, the Morga. But I'm currently reading this book. I don't know if it will be, well, it's up there maybe.
Yes.
It's a Pigafetta's Philippine
Pigafetta, yes.
Culinary encounters during the first circumnavigation. And I have not finished reading it, but in a passage I selected here, they already mentioned that in a contact of Magellan, as they say here, and Pigafetta, one of their explorers, with Zuluans, so from the south of Mindanao, they say the natives returned to the Spanish ships on a specific date, bringing the provisions that Magellan purchased aboard the two boats. These were coconuts, sweet oranges, and a jar of palm wine. They also brought a cock for the foreigners. The foreign explorers must have been delighted to know there were provisions in the area that they were familiar with. In fact, chicken remains that date back the 10th century in Mindanao and 11,000 years ago in Luzon have been discovered by the Philippine National Museum. So that's a another
source,
another data or another way how to discover through this early. And here we are talking of the very first contact, right? Magellan was the very first contact of the Western Occidental Spanish Empire with the Philippines. And there are already notes documenting chicken in this case. So how much more we should explore and find what happened with Turkey. So I have no questions, just these two comments, and I let other people in the audience to. Just to say that this galleon trade project, we recently extended it or have a partnership with the Panthropocene project, right? Who is interested in understanding the environmental impact of these animals and plants brought from Americas to Southeast Asia, specifically to the Philippines. And now we are collaborating. This project is led by Patrick Roberts and the Filipino branch by our colleague Grace Barreto Tesoro. And that's it for me. Thank you very much, Lalo, and I let you with other questions.
No, thanks so much for your comments. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. I saw that Sir Vic, Dr. Victor Paz had a question. If you still have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and start.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Professor Corona, for sharing your research and interest and for creating this fascinating project with Juan Rofes and our colleagues. I have so much to ask you and also to comment, but let me just start with a clarification. Did I hear you correctly? And in that early map that you showed, that the Turkey was demonstrated to be present during the Neolithic of Mexico. Yes.
The Lithic period. Yes.
So they found turkey bones.
Yes.
In archaeological. So that's interesting. And there's no archaeological record of an earlier spread of wild turkey to South America before the 16th century. We don't have no record of that. Fascinating. May I ask, why is it that we underscore that it is wild turkey? Is there a physiological difference? You've explained very clearly the domestication process and dynamics, but has it created a physiological difference between perhaps, let's say, the turkeys that are highly domesticated or in cages and the ones that are free range? Is there a difference in bone structure or that we know of?
There's no clear difference. It's interesting because the wild turkey has an structure very hard. There's no clear changes of size or like another animals like the mammals or anything else. There is no clear change in the when it's domesticated or when it's only in management. We have yes. Now we start the study for European specimens. Maybe we found that some difference here because in Europe it's fully domesticated, and we see some change. I hope we see very many changes here in the.
So this is a potential result of the project then.
Yes, 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 yes.
What you're going to do.
But in America, we don't have a clearly change of the subspecies or changes in the species of wild turkey in the places where the supposedly it's domesticated.
It's interesting that if it is already domesticated or at least exploited in the Mexican Neolithic, that there could really be a chance, a possibility that it has an earlier spread in South America. The reason why I'm thinking this is to be open to the idea of the transmission of Turkey to the Pacific Islands at a much earlier date.
It's possible.
So, but this is going to be something that your project will perhaps accidentally unravel once you've started collecting all the and looking at the materials from the Marianas, no, to even I was thinking, when was the turkey introduced to Rapa Nui, for example, just off Chile? Was it only the 60s? So things like that. But I think, but of course, this is peripheral to the central part of your research. But I'm sure in the larger scale of your interest in turkeys, you'll be interested in that. May I suggest also the Alsina. Father Alsina wrote a 3-volume, actually 4, that is now published, and he had one entire volume on animals. Maybe one you can ask Kate to go through that, no, and see if there's any mention of of the missionaries bringing turkey as early as the late 1600s, the early 1700s. And so let me see. I have a question. Oh yes, that point that Juan was saying is the interesting part. If through the process of your research you can establish a distinction physiologically, not only in archaeogenetically, between North American turkey stands or populations and turkeys coming from Central America, that will be very, very important, because the one I know, and that doesn't mean that it's the only one really found so far. But the one identified so far is the one that I already gave Juan access and Kate. This excavated turkey bone that we found at the foundation of the Intendencia building in Intramuros. But we are not so, because it's dumped. I don't know if it's dumped during the American period, right? Or is it an earlier dump in the construction of the building in the early 19th century? So that would be interesting to see. It's a long one.
Yes, absolutely.
So many, there are many. You're not interested in cats, no, in cat.
Yes.
Yeah, I have several others, but let others talk. I see one raising his hands. So.
No, thanks so much. But really, I think that is really interesting about the remains of these places that you said, and maybe we found that some kind of lineages of particularly Turkey in these places. Thanks so much for your comments.
Yeah, and Juan, you had something to add?
Yes. Regarding to what Victor was commenting, yes, so he say it. That was part of what I was going to add. In one of the sites that Victor have generously offered for us to study, the Intendencia ruins, if I am not wrong. So one of our colleagues have already identified it. turkey remains from the 19th century, if I'm not wrong. So we definitely have to pursue analysis, archaeogenetics, stable isotopes to try to find out the connections, the genetic history of those bones. I think we also have early 20th century turkey bones in one of the sites in Batangas, given by Grace. So we already have 2 and hopefully more. So I would like also to add that we will probably accessing the material from a shipwreck, San Diego shipwreck, held by the museum, by the National Museum. So we will have the chance to see like a photograph exactly what they were transporting from the Philippines to Mexico, because this shipwreck was attacked and sunk by the Netherlands combat boat. So it was a galleon trade turned into a combat boat, but it could not stand the attack from the Netherlands vessel. It was sunk, and yeah, so we will probably have with Kate the chance to check if there are turkey and what other species there, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, these data are very interesting because the analysis of the contents of the ships on the sea mainly are mainly from ceramic, for coins, but no human, no animal remains, neither plants remains, and if we found it in some shipwreck animal remains, they're a great discovery.
I'm even thinking on we always target the domestic and most known well animals, right? Like cow, goat, horse, what happened, but we forget that of the little uninvited guests, the stowaway. So we potentially may have lineages of rats, and I'm sure there were rats from the new world coming on mice, right? So this is potentially a very long line of research for generations of researchers.
We hope so.
And so I would like to point to some questions, I think, from Dr. Eusebio in the chat box. You have very interesting comments there.
Yes. I see it now in the chat. Yes, we have to. In the talk, I pointed out the situation that maybe the Turkeys come from in the travel with the Spaniards, but another possible route is from the Portuguese, and we cannot discard the situation, and because the historical sources, as I said, indicates that's both situations, and we don't have this data. And about the publications of Erin Thornton, yes, I know to Erin, and we collaborated the work of journal Archaeological Science reports. We have editors of this volume, and I know clearly the work of, but she is interested now in study the situation in Mesoamerica and the southwest of America, and we studied this part on Mesoamerica. We produced the article with Aurélie Manan and Camille Speller. It's in ResearchGate, and you can see also this publication. And for that reason, we try to expand the research to South America, to the Caribbean, and to the Pacific area, because we need to see the situation with the pulses of expansion, the geographic expansions of the wild turkey along the time.
Yeah, just for clarification, for those of you
yes,
who didn't see it in the chat, it was It was Ma'am Michelle's question on the local turkeys here in the Philippines being brought by the Portuguese that was presented during the actual talk. And then Sir Vic, you had another question?
Yes. No, I was just wondering if are you also for this project? Are you collaborating, or do you know of the work of Ivan Valdez Bubnov, who's from the Instituto de Investigaciones Históricas there in Mexico? Because he has written, when I just got introduced this work, but I'm fascinated by the quality. He's interested in shipbuilding industry of Spanish shipbuilding, but holistic. For example, this article that I've just pulled out, Crown Trade, Church, and Indigenous Societies, the functioning of the Spanish shipbuilding industry in the Philippines, 1571-1816. And he has a series of these kinds of articles that has written. And I think he will be an interesting person also to bring into this kind of discourse when it comes to galleon trade, and because he looks like a man who knows he knows the archival records well, and looks at it at a very comprehensive social history approach. So I was just wondering, that would be a good person to bring over. And the other thing, Juan and Eduardo, it's in Mindanao, there, you see, the beauty of Turkey remains. In my thinking, they're quite robust, no, and then as you mentioned earlier, they can make tools out of a lot of its bones, so like well, this is not a turkey bone. I think this is emu bone, but they can make scapulas out of it and all of that, and even in an excavation from an earlier period, for example, in the Philippines, if there are substantial sized bones, they are collected. But a lot of them may not have been identified. So that would be an interesting direction also to look at the stores of old excavations that are quite substantial. For example, the waterlogged sites in Butuan are not all old. I mean, some of them are maybe 1,000 years old or even earlier, and that would be interesting to see if they've collected large bones that are not identified. And the where they found horses in Hulo, no, in the Sulu archipelago, that there was a substantial number of animal remains there. Maybe there's a turkey there. I don't know. No? Although Angel Bautista did a study of this assemblage, maybe he did find something there, or maybe there's an unidentified animal bone there that can be then now identified by this project. So those are things that can be looked at.
No, it looks very interesting. Yes. We need to see this these places. Yes.
By the way, in Acapulco, are there a lot of studies or are there some sites, archaeological sites, that recovered turkey remains by any chance?
No. I was looking for this. The archaeology of Acapulco is very scarce. Yes. We have a real problem with this. The ancient San Diego fort. It's a building, historical building from the colonial epoch in Acapulco. Was excavated only recently, and much of the information was lost. No, in the construction of the Paradise Place, no, was lost. Many of the information, the historical information of Acapulco. But we try to see how many sites or localities
And Veracruz, also in Veracruz, no? Because
yes,
those are
also in
the
Veracruz, yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. There's
those are
another
the two
important
main
place,
ones.
and the places of Oaxaca is another places in the south coast of Mexico. There is Huatulco. It's another possible place that with colonial ports and maybe with colonial localities here. But it is part of the research, no? Clearly, yes.
Okay, yeah. I actually had a question as well. I know that your talk primarily focused on um, the arrival and the sustained I guess presence of turkeys here in the Philippines. But I was actually wondering about the other um, islands in the Pacific. I know we mentioned Rapa Nui, but I was thinking, I guess, more towards Hawaii and then places like Fiji, Tonga, Samoa. Do they have any sort of presence of turkey? Because I know,
No.
or
Mhm. No. We don't have any information now for bones in Rapa Nui or in Chile or anything else. There are the introduction of South America is very later. It's from 18th or 19th century. But Victor Paz, as mentioned, that maybe we talked about early trading in between the Islas Marianas or anything else with the south of the prehistoric or pre-Hispanic sites in South America. But I'm open, but now we don't have any evidence of this.
although throughout the I guess the colonial period of the Pacific, do you see the arrival of Mesoamerican fauna and flora to those other islands that haven't been necessarily colonized by the Spanish?
Yes. In fact, we have now there are in the next months we will see publications from Cuba and from Colombia. There are earliest turkeys from those areas. From Peru, we don't have, but I think we are very near because the people now is working hard in these areas of Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador. There are other places that it's possible to find turkey remains.
Yes, very interesting. Very
Yes.
interesting. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand if you do. Because otherwise, I think this might be a good place to stop. Because otherwise, yeah, I think if you have any further questions, as Dr. Edward so graciously shared his email, I'm sure that you could contact him if you had further questions. Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll end things there. Thank you very much again, Dr. Eduardo Corona, for coming to give this wonderful talk. I know that I learned a lot as someone who's always been fascinated by turkeys growing up in North America. You know, turkeys was always a cornerstone of, Thanksgiving, of Christmas, and to learn that, they even hear that turkeys have played a significant or a substantial role in colonization. It brings up a lot of questions that I still need time to sort of digest. But yeah, for now, again, thank you everyone for attending. This has been today's edition of BINALOT Talk. Do we actually have any? Yeah, so yes, there you go. In the chat, next week we'll start at 2 p.m. I don't know if we have the speaker lined up or the topic, but feel free to follow our BINALOT Talks page for that information. So we do actually. So the title of the talk is called Political Hauntings, the Visual Rhetoric of the Living, the Virtual, and the Dead in Philippine Elections, with Oscar Cerquina Jr. So Please join us next week for that talk. And again, thank you for everyone for joining. And again, Dr. Eduardo Corona for giving this lovely talk at 10, and it's now currently 11 p.m. probably where you are currently at.
That's fine. Okay. Thank
All
you
right,
all.
so-
Okay, and thank you all
thank
for
you.
your questions, your comments. Yes, thank you, and see you soon. Okay.
All right. Bye,
Gracias,
everyone.
gracias Lalo. Thank
Gracias a
you.
ustedes. Gracias.